Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm your host, Brian Scott. Today's episode is dedicated to visualization. I often get comments and messages that ask me, Brian, how can I visualize better? And it's a tough question to answer. Visualization is obviously one of the key components in creating your reality, but for many people, they simply can't visualize properly. They can't open the mind's eye in a way that works effectively for them. They cannot create the visual images that they want. I have dedicated some previous episodes on some different visualization techniques, including the holographic visualization technique using eye movements that I have in a previous episode. But there's so much that we can talk about when it comes to visualization, when we're fantasizing or it's reality, how visual images are related to the word. And we can look back on the past, the way Egyptians and Sumerians and in yoga and even Christians talked about visualization. Perhaps I will dedicate entire podcasts on that in the future. And there are a variety of visualization experiences. We have daydreams, we have eidetic images, we have our imagination, hypnagogic and hypnopompic images. We have dreams and hallucinations, after images. When we see visuals on a psychedelic drug, it's quite different than when we hallucinate from something else. There's also the understanding of visualization perception and the effects of visualization. But I wanted to focus on how we can open up the mind's eye, and maybe if we can come up with some techniques that will help you to visualize. Once you learn how to effectively visualize, it will change your life. We have covered this in other episodes, and of course, the feeling is the secret. And for a lot of people that simply can't visualize, remember the most important thing is the feeling that you associate with the visual image. But it is also possible to completely manifest without feeling if you visualize properly. But there has to be an understanding of visualization. Sometimes you're not visualizing, you're just experiencing a thought. The linking of the thought to the visual is important. We've already said that visualization is a natural skill and that people use all the time. And moreover, we believe that people can learn to improve their ability to visualize. In this episode, we will deal with how people visualize, the methods people use to increase control and direct visualization in order to make it more effective. There's information about how people's minds work and how perceived images can assist people in visualizing. All the way back to the 1800s, psychologists have written extensively about people differing abilities to visualize. Some people have great detail, while others have felt they only receive thoughts in the form of words. In 1883, Sir Francis Galton, the English psychologist, formulated a theory that people have characteristic modes of thought, such as visualization, thinking in images, and verbalization, thinking in words. At that time, psychologists felt that people were either one or the other, verbalizer or visualizer. Since then, several tests have been developed to measure personal differences in the ability to visualize and even to measure the degree of vividness and controllability of a person's images. A number of psychologists have come to the conclusion that people cannot be categorized as either visualizers or verbalizers. They believe that people generally use both modes of thought, although one person may use images more than another person. The extent to that which a person uses imagery depends a great deal upon cultural factors such as education and experience. Later on, neurolinguistic programming established on some level that there are dominant factors. There is a visually dominant person compared to a kinesthetically dominant person, as well as an auditory dominant person. Each of those are ways that we filter our experience. And so if you meet somebody that's visually dominant, that means that is really the first thing that they use to interpret an experience or situation. They still use auditory, they still use their feelings, but it is sort of the code or program they use to understanding a situation. So you get very powerful, persuasive manipulators out there that can find out what you are, and then they find out your code, that you're visual first, then kinesthetic, and then they bring it back to you in the way that they communicate with you, which can be incredibly powerful if you're not aware of what's happening. So this episode really describes ways that people can build on their present visualization abilities and become stronger visualizers. So the exercises that we're going to talk about make people aware of visualization in a concrete way. And once people are aware of the different aspects of visualization, they often discover that they notice situations in which they naturally visualize all around them, and so they tend to consciously visualize more. Before we go into specific visualization techniques, there's a couple things that we need to cover that are very important. Certain things that people naturally tend to do, but may not be aware of, greatly increase their ability to hold an image in their mind. We will discuss techniques people have used to develop the natural skills of relaxing, concentrating, and seeing before we talk about the visualization techniques. And some of these techniques stem from yogic practices that are thousands of years old, and some are the result of research by contemporary psychologists and physiologists. Visualization is an inner state of mind. In order to visualize effectively, people have to put themselves in a state in which they can be aware of inner processes. For most people, at least initially, it is helpful to separate themselves from distracting or chaotic external stimuli. This means finding a quiet, tranquil place in or out of doors for visualizing. For many of you, when you consider it a meditation, it sort of changes the equation. So don't call it a meditation if you don't want to. Eventually, it becomes possible to focus so clearly on internal stimuli that even strong external stimuli recede from the consciousness. It is much easier to visualize in the beginning if external stimuli are at a minimum, at the beginning of the process of learning to visualize. Now, I'm quite aware of aphantasia, and I've met a number of people that suffer from this. That is the inability to voluntarily form mental images. And I have found some success with the visualization technique that I mentioned earlier. The holographic visualization technique, in which eye movements are incorporated, can help. Also, focusing on feelings and bringing up images in your environment can help solidify visualization for those people. Perhaps we will deal with that in another episode, but I would still listen to this if you are suffering from aphantasia, because a number of people have been able to overcome this limitation. It is not medically forever. In some cases, it's a block that you experienced culturally from your childhood with your family, and that you can overcome it. All things are possible. So remember, we want to find a quiet physical space. And in addition to that, it is helpful to find a quiet mental space. This means putting aside as far as possible ordinary concerns. People must make a choice to temporarily put aside matters that are not directly pertinent to their visualizing. Body relaxation is the first step in learning how to improve the ability to visualize. As soon as a person picks a quiet time and place, he will find himself beginning to relax. Conscious relaxation further removes extraneous stimuli, therefore allowing a person to concentrate more intensely on their inner state. Body relaxation has also been found by several researchers to facilitate the flow of internal images. In order to relax, it's important to know how tension and relaxation feel. Most people know when their muscles are really tense, but they usually cannot distinguish low levels of tension, and they do not feel they're able to relax their muscles at will. In the 1920s, Dr. Edmund Jacobson, an American physician, conducted research in muscle physiology with emphasis on relaxation. Jacobson proved that people can become aware of tension and learn to relax. From his research, Jacobson developed a technique called progressive relaxation, something I do in a lot of my meditations. Jacobson's studies were the first major scientific work on relaxation and provided the groundwork for some psychotherapeutic techniques, a natural childbirth technique, and other techniques that reduce blood pressure. People can become aware of the difference between tension and relaxation in their bodies by tensing a muscle and then letting it go. So that is one exercise that you can do for becoming aware of tension and relaxation, similar to ones used in Jacobson's progressive relaxation technique. With your arm resting on a flat surface, raise your hand by bending it up at the wrist. When your hand is raised, the muscles on the top of the forearm below the elbow will be contracted and tense. If you let your hand go limp, these muscles will be relaxed and your hand will drop. The feeling of tension, of contraction, when you raise your hand is subtle. If you raise your hand back too far, you may be confused by a feeling of strain in the opposing muscles. If you don't feel the upper forearm tension at first, alternately raise your hand in a slow, even motion, then let it go limp. People can use exercises similar to the one that I just described to become aware of tension and relaxation in any muscle in their body. In progressive relaxation, Jacobson has people work on different areas of their body one by one, contracting muscles, letting them go, and then letting their whole body relax for about an hour in some cases. It may take you longer or shorter depending on how good you are at relaxing. Doing whatever works for you is best, but allowing yourself to relax and remain relaxed is the key. It's allowing relaxation to take place. That is the key. Émile Coué, a famous French pharmacist who wrote on the power of suggestion in the 19th century, pointed out what he called the law of reversed effort. To make good suggestions, it is absolutely necessary to do it without effort. The use of the will must be entirely put aside. One must have recourse exclusively to the imagination. This is similar to the effect that Zen philosophers have referred to as letting go. Another commonly used technique for achieving body relaxation involves autosuggestion. Doctors and psychologists have been using this technique for hundreds of years. It consists of basically a set of verbal instructions. People mentally repeat the instructions and allow the suggestions to work by themselves. You'll find that many people do that in meditations that you hear on YouTube. In the famous writer-scientist John Lilly's terms, what people are doing is programming their own biocomputers. They're giving themselves a set of instructions in order to accomplish a particular goal. People frequently give themselves mental instructions in reference to actions in the outer world. For example, in following a recipe from a book, a person might say to himself, "First I have to beat the egg whites until stiff." If he is unfamiliar with the process, he will tend to give himself more complete mental instructions, almost as if someone were reading the recipe to him. In fact, he might have someone read the instructions. As he comes to know the recipe by heart, he may simply say to himself, by way of instruction, egg whites. Finally, he may not even hear any instruction in inner speech. He may simply have a mental image of beaten egg whites, or a sense of beating in his hand, or even a space of silence in which he just knows what to do. Similarly, when people first begin to cook, they follow recipes closely. As they become more experienced, they may alter the ingredients or their amounts as they get ideas for making recipes. Everyone has their own methods that they use consciously or unconsciously to relax. In our society, with its external orientation, most people relax through their leisure time activities. These include swimming or bike riding or jogging, and yoga are all activities, when done in harmony with the body, leave people feeling energized. Gardening, taking walks. Everybody has their own way of relaxing, but I'm saying that a prerequisite of proper visualization is to relax. The next is concentration, and we've said that it is a useful preliminary step before actually visualizing. Deep relaxation serves to clear people's minds and to remove muscular tension, which can be distracting. In order to visualize effectively, people must also be able to concentrate, to fix their mind on one thought or image and to hold it there. The counting breaths exercise is very powerful, and it demonstrates that thoughts constantly enter people's minds one after another, and that people seem to have little control over the occurrence or nature of such thoughts. Indeed, everyone who's had an experience like starting to think about dinner only to find himself thinking about what he likes to eat, then about college friends that he has eaten with, then about life at college. Obviously, if people are trying to fix their mind on one image, this lack of thought control is not helpful. Yoga students are taught some simple exercises to help concentrate. Check out my episode on concentration by Christian Larson, and that is very interesting. His idea of concentration is how interested and joyful you are in whatever you're concentrating. But there's more to it. In addition to helping people concentrate, exercises in yoga help people to understand the nature of their thinking. The first of these yoga exercises involves concentration on a small external object. The object may be of any shape or substance, but it should be fairly simple and small enough so that its whole image can be taken in at a glance. Such an object might be an orange or a pencil, light bulb or a rock. Here's an exercise for concentrating on a small object. Place the object several feet from you so that you can easily see all of it. Look directly at the object. Keep your eyes open and think only of the object. You may notice the size, the shape, the color, the texture, or the parts of the object. Beyond such analysis, you may think only of the object as a whole. The goal of this is to keep your attention fixed only on the object, and try to do this for at least a minute. Each time another thought comes to mind, simply go back to the object on which you're concentrating. Practice in going back each time thoughts intrude, and will strengthen your ability to concentrate. In doing this, most people are surprised to find their mind wander so easily. They find themselves thinking about how well they're concentrating, or the next moment, they find themselves wondering if it hasn't been a minute yet. Then they wonder why they're doing this exercise at all. Then they hear a noise outside and wonder what's causing the noise. The point is, they're trying their best to concentrate on the object, but they find their minds are darting about, as the yogis say, like a mischievous monkey. Another yoga concentration exercise is based on counting breaths. People who count their breaths also notice that thoughts come into their mind which make them lose track of counting. On a recent meditation I did, Perfect Abundance and Fulfillment, if you listen to the first 15 minutes, I do a complete 100 number countdown. And for many people, that's very difficult to do, to count to 100 without distraction. So it's very similar to counting your breaths. As you get better and better at this, and you become used to noticing your thoughts, returning to the breath, there are several other things that you can do. And one is just simply stop the thought as quickly as possible. Cut it off in mid-sentence, as it were. The natural desire is to follow the thought through. Practice in chopping the thought off at the roots frees you from having to follow the thought through and prevents them becoming enmeshed in a train of thoughts that does not pertain to the counting of the breath. In fact, it makes people more aware that thoughts constantly arise in their consciousness. And the second way of dealing with arising thoughts is simply to let them pass. In this approach, people maintain an impersonal attitude toward their thoughts as if they were someone else's. They neither grab hold of the thought nor chop them down. They neither stop them nor pursue them. There's a Zen metaphor that thoughts are like birds flying across the sky of one's mind, and one simply watches them come into view and then disappear. This exercise in time brings people to a state of heightened awareness, one in which they are relaxed yet alert. People practicing this find that quiet periods when they are only aware of counting their breaths lengthen and increase, and as people become better able to concentrate on counting their breaths, they find themselves better able to concentrate on a single visual image. People find they are able to hold an image for longer periods of time and are less bothered by intruding thoughts. People who have practiced any method of meditation have already developed some skills in concentration and relaxation that are useful in visualization. The final thing before we talk about visualization techniques is seeing. Active, alert seeing is another preliminary that is helpful in strengthening the ability to visualize. Seeing, as we usually speak of it, involves much more than exciting the cells of the retina. it involves more than the eye, it involves the mind. There's a process that happens when you see something, and it involves 3 parts of the brain. Seeing is not like pointing a camera at a scene. It has a learned ability which can always be further developed. The better people train their minds to perceive external images, the easier it becomes for them to imagine internal images as well. Many psychologists believe that congenitally blind people do not have visual images. In the same way, people who see blindly will find it difficult to picture visual images in their mind. And people can see blindly. For example, a man who is deep in thought might walk right by a friend on the street. If that fact is pointed out to him, he might say, "I didn't even see her or him," although they were directly in your field of vision. How many times have you missed something like that? I do it all the time. In fact, you did see them, but your brain was concentrated on another thought, and you did not bring to consciousness the image of your friend. Another somewhat different example of blind seeing might take place when people view an object only with regard to a specific function. For instance, if a person is at a party and wishes to sit down, he may notice an empty chair and see it only as a place to sit and rest. If someone were to ask him the next day to describe the chair in which he sat, he might not even be able to remember the color or shape of the chair. But he did see the chair, and his brain recorded the information about it, even if he cannot consciously recall it. I've talked before about the fact that most formal education does not promote visual imagery. Its main focus lies in goal-oriented verbal thought. In most elementary and high schools, for instance, art is considered a minor, even recreational and unimportant subject. Prestige is accorded only to those courses such as physics, mathematics, which require a high degree of abstract thought. Likewise, success in the latter courses is considered a mark of intelligence. In fact, at the highest levels, such fields of abstract interest demand a high degree of visual imagery. The first step for people to take in developing their ability to see is to look with awareness and alertness at whatever is in their visual field. This is similar to what people do in the exercise for concentrating on an external object. But in this case, the goal is to go beyond the everyday labels associated with the thing seen and to concentrate purely on the visual images. Here is a series of exercises on seeing similar to those used in college courses on visual thinking. There is much more in what people see than they usually notice. One way to become aware of this is to look at one characteristic of an object after another. This is the substance of the first exercise. Notice the way light strikes objects, the highlights and the shadows, reflections and radiolucent quality, and the range of tones it creates. With your body completely relaxed, let your eyes wander over the outline of each object. Notice sharp lines, soft lines, the total shape of the object, and the smaller shapes which comprise it. Notice the texture and finish of the subject. Is it rough, smooth, dull, or shiny? Look for the grain in the surface. Look at the color of the object, the subtle gradations of the color and tone. Is the color bright or dull, faint or dark, uniform or varying? Be aware of the depth and perspective inherent in what you're looking at. Once I started to really look and see things, I began to visualize better. Another way of looking at objects is to simply stare at an object and experience it. Here's an exercise for experiencing objects. Allow thoughts to arise freely as you fix your eyes on different aspects of an object. Try not to react verbally to or to label what you see. Just try to experience the images and the feelings that surround those images. If you do this for a long time, say 15 or 30 minutes, you'll discover a great deal about the object beyond its labeled aspects. One of the goals of this exercise is for people to allow the object they're looking at to fill their whole consciousness. This is similar to the concentration exercise that we discussed earlier, in that the goal is for people to let no other thoughts enter their mind. Here's an exercise which people can use to allow an object to fill their consciousness. Move quite close to the object so that it fills your entire visual field. Then move even closer in order to concentrate on a single part of the object. In doing this, you will probably realize that your eye focuses on and takes in the details of, begins to fill your whole consciousness as well as your visual field. Once you become experienced at moving in until the object fills your consciousness, you'll be able to accomplish the same thing without changing your position by mentally moving in like a zoom lens on a camera. Or you can imagine the object actually becoming larger and larger. Also, you can practice mentally zooming out so the object becomes smaller and your field of vision takes in the entire side of the room in which the object is located. As you zoom in or out, you will notice new details in the object. And when you zoom in, you will be aware of surface texture, small cracks, specks of dust, hair. And as you zoom out, you'll be more aware of shape, depth, perspective, and the relationship of size between objects. Another way for people to develop their ability to see is to look at an object from different mental points of view, as well as from different physical vantage points. Here's an exercise which involves rapidly shifting viewpoints. Look at an apple. First, look at it as something to be eaten. You might imagine how the apple tastes, whether it is a variety you especially like, whether it is fresh or not. Just as you become a hungry person ready to bite into that apple, shift your viewpoint to that of an artist painting a picture of the apple. Become aware of the color of the apple, the texture, the light that is striking the apple, how difficult or easy it will be to paint it. As you become ready to pick up your brush, shift rapidly to the point of view of a worm eating his way through the apple. Then shift again to the point of view of a migrant worker picking the apple. Shift once again to the viewpoint of a small child bobbing for the apple in a tub of water. Each time people's viewpoints change, they'll be aware of the different aspects of the apple. Experiencing this and understanding it helps people to break free of their habitualized ways of seeing familiar objects. It makes the objects appear fresh and new and gives people greater control over the labels and associations they unconsciously use in ordinary seeing. Another useful exercise involves here and now seeing. Walk down a street and concentrate only on what is immediately in your field of vision. If you begin to think of problems you have or what you'll be doing after this exercise, bring your attention back to your seeing. In doing this, you'll realize that seeing is a here and now experience. As you move, the images change. All there is at any one moment is the present image. You may also notice that qualities such as the intensity of color increase. You may find this to be a beautiful, exhilarating experience which leaves you with the kind of relaxed alertness we discussed earlier in the concentration exercises. You may even notice you experience certain blank periods in which you cannot recall anything happening, thinking, seeing, or moving. If that happens, simply return to seeing the here and now. The blank periods are examples of what Gurdjieff calls not remembering yourself. In terms of this particular exercise, these periods are simply breaks in concentration. You can do the same exercise walking down a street from a slightly different point of view, that of remembering everything that you see. After you've walked a short distance, stop, close your eyes, and try to recall as many of the things that you saw as you can. When I first started doing this, it was very difficult. I was surprised at how much I didn't remember. Another example of here and now seeing involves staring at a table with a number of objects on it. Put a number of diverse objects on your dining room table. Stare at the table for a minute. Then close your eyes and see how many of the objects on the table you can see in your mind's eye. Do not list the objects verbally in your mind as you do this. Then look at the table again and see how closely what you remembered matched the things on the table. If you try this exercise several times, you'll probably find that you remember more objects each time. Another exercise designed to improve visual awareness is called Da Vinci's device. Leonardo da Vinci noted that when he looked at a wall that had cracks, chips, and paint stains and let his imagination wander, he noticed resemblances to animal shapes, figures, even whole landscapes in these random defects. Da Vinci felt that looking at such amorphous patterns and allowing the mind to play upon them, inventing one object after another, helped to stimulate imaginative seeing. Everyone has had similar experiences as a child, when he lay on his back and stared at fluffy, cumulus clouds, finding in them ships and faces, seeing new patterns as the wind continually changed the billowy white masses. A somewhat different exercise is to find basic shapes and patterns within recognizable objects. For example, a person can look at the bicycle and notice that the hub of the wheel and the spokes make a circle with lines radiating out, while the reflector on the rear fender makes a circle on a wide line. Artists and craftsmen have developed their ability to see through the study and practice of their art. I can only say when I started to paint, I noticed I could see things so much better. I could see the leaves on the tree. I could see so many more details, specifically with the way that light and shadow interact with them. Drawing, photographing, sculpting, throwing pots, all teach people how to see. People who have done any of these things have learned skills that will carry over to the practice of visualization. Other people who haven't done anything like drawing or painting since elementary school might enjoy trying some of these things anew, purely from the point of view of developing their ability to see. The process is what is important here, not the art produced. Learning to see directly affects the ability to visualize. In seeing, the images are external, and visualizing, the images are internal, but the process and the effects are similar. And so now we've developed that we need to relax and concentrate and see as a sort of prerequisite to becoming a very good visualizer and opening the mind's eye. We've said that visualization is creating a mental image, creating a picture in the mind, seeing with the mind's eye. Especially when people first begin to consciously visualize, the images in their mind's eye are different from the images that they see with the aid of their retinas. Indeed, these mental images more resemble thoughts and ideas than sights. They're fuzzy in many cases. Many people feel as if they are making up the images rather than seeing them. This is natural. The feeling of making it up is the way beginning visualization feels. Early mental images appear less vivid than external images. In fact, some people feel they sense their inner images rather than they see them. This may be because they are consciously appraising their inner images for the first time. For the first time, they're questioning the reality of their inner images with the analytical sphere of their mind. This is made up of a series of exercises designed to help people improve their ability to visualize. The exercises are similar to those used by psychologists, doctors, artists, and yogis in teaching visualization. The exercises help to improve people's natural ability to visualize, making it possible for them to use visualization to achieve specific goals. Each exercise is intended to strengthen a particular aspect of visualization. Now, the first exercise consists of visualizing a small, uncomplicated, two-dimensional object, such as a triangle. Here's the exercise. Take several deep breaths and relax. Find some triangle, go on the internet or draw one yourself, and look directly at the triangle for about a minute until you feel quite familiar with it. Close your eyes. Imagine that you're still looking at the triangle. See the triangle. Allow your eyes to scan it just as you did when you were looking at the object. See the whiteness of the triangle and the grayness of the area around and within the triangle, for instance. Now open your eyes and look at the triangle again. Compare the triangle that you see in front of you with the one that you visualized. Close your eyes once more and then visualize the triangle again. Imagine that you see the image of the triangle about 18 inches in front of your eyes. You're projecting your imagined triangular image outward. When you project outward in this way, you'll be able to scan the image with your eyes as if it were an external image. Many people who do this for the first time expect to see an inner image as sharp and clear as the image that they had created. But actually, people often see something different from their expectation. For example, the first time my wife did this exercise, she described it as follows. I was aware of the triangle only fleetingly. At one moment, I was aware of it, and the next moment, I was not. At times, I was only aware of part of the image, like the point at the bottom. And then for a second, I could see the whole image. The image was never as bright as the image before me. I felt as if I was looking at the image in a darkened room. My friend Michael, who had done this exercise many times, gave this description of what he saw. I see the image clearly, however, it is a different experience than looking at the image on the page. The image fills my whole consciousness. I don't see the page in a room with other objects around it. I constantly look around the triangle and I basically see just the area that I'm looking at. I'm aware of the details, the sharpness of the white compared to the gray, the texture of the paper from where the triangle is. If I stare directly at the center of the triangle, I then see a bright, ill-defined triangle flashing at me. It's almost like a neon light. It's easier for me to move around my eyes around to different areas than to stare fixedly at the triangle, which requires more concentration. The image has a reality about it which is as real as an external triangle, but I would not confuse it with one. Sometimes the triangle drifts away or one even disappears if my interest wanes. Then I concentrate on the mental image of the triangle again and it comes back. The important thing for people is to accept whatever they see as the right visualization experience for them. If people have fixed expectations of what they think they ought to see, they are apt to feel discouraged, to feel that they aren't doing the exercise correctly, or that they can't visualize it. These feelings virtually extinguish any image that they do see. For one thing, negative feelings break people's concentration of the image. They also program people's minds against improvement. When people's egos enter their visualizations, for whatever reason, the visualization experience changes. You can call this ego static. Often the visualization will disappear and there'll be a black period when people suddenly realize that they have stopped visualizing. Then they have become aware that they are having thoughts such as, I'm really good or bad at this visualization. At this point, it is helpful they simply turn their attention to the visualizing again. Or if they redo the relaxation technique. It's been my experience that the more people visualize, the more understanding they have of the whole experience and the more real their images become to them. There are many exercises that I will present for visualizing. In most techniques, a two-dimensional shape is usually given as the first visualization exercise because of its simplicity. However, the fact that the shape is simple, abstract, and in a sense not a part of everyday experience may make it more difficult for some people to visualize. Motivation plays a tremendous part in visualization, and some people may feel little involvement with a triangle, little motivation to visualize it. For that reason, some people will find it easier to visualize a more familiar object such as an apple or a pencil. People sometimes do an exercise involving a simple two-dimensional shape and are disappointed in their experience and decide they are poor visualizers. Whereas the same people may find it easy, for instance, to visualize a naked person of the opposite sex and may have done so for years, not realizing that they were visualizing. It's easy to visualize. You have to tell yourself that. And for the people suffering from aphantasia, there is a certain percentage of them that have convinced themselves they can't visualize when in fact they've been doing it all along. The second exercise I want to discuss involves visualizing a simple, familiar three-dimensional object such as an apple, a flower, or a cup. Place an apple about 2 feet in front of you. You'll probably find it easier if the apple is at eye level. Set the apple by itself with no other objects around it to confuse or distract you. Take several deep breaths and relax. Now look directly at the apple until you feel you're familiar with it. Close your eyes. Imagine that you still see the apple about 2 feet in front of you. See the apple in your mind's eye. Scan the image just as you did when you were looking at the apple with your eyes open. As you look at the image, notice the shape of the apple, the shadings of color, any irregularities, the tilt of the apple, the angle of the stem. Open your eyes and compare your inner image with the outer one. Notice any aspects you were not aware of while visualizing. Close your eyes again and repeat the exercise. Another memory image exercise that people can do involves visualization of a room that they remember from childhood. Some psychologists believe that most people find this the easiest visualization exercise to do. Here's another form of the childhood room visualization. Close your eyes, take several deep breaths and relax. Picture yourself in a room from your childhood. Look at the wall in front of you. Scan it with your eyes just as if you were there. Notice the furniture in front of you. Any pictures on the walls. Let your gaze travel downward. Notice you're standing on a rug. Notice what the floor is made of. Now look at the wall to your right, to your left. And finally turn around and look at the wall behind you. Notice doors, closets. Look at the windows. Notice the color and texture of the curtains. These visualizations are arranged more or less in a graded series. Each one introduces new aspects of the visualization process. The exercise with the triangle is an introduction to visualizing shape and black and white tone. The apple exercise introduces color, texture, and three-dimensionality. Both of these exercises consist of very recent memory images formed from objects immediately present in the outside world. The childhood room visualization is a distant memory image of a place and objects most likely not present. In that exercise, visualizers mentally move about for the first time and locate themselves spatially within a visualized place. The next exercise also concerns moving about, but in this exercise, visualizers will move around an object rather than within it. Relax, close your eyes, visualize a large object that you know well, such as a house. Imagine that you're standing facing the front of the house, which fills your visual field. Look at the door, the windows, the angle of the roof. Notice the material of which the house is constructed, the color and texture of it. Walk up to the house and look closely at the siding. Notice the fine details of the texture. Look at other details as well from this close vantage. Now walk slowly around the house, pausing to look at each side. Notice the windows and doors and shutters, etc. Walk completely around the house and come back to the front. The process of visualization seems to bypass many of the laws of the physical world. Some people may have noticed while doing the last exercise that when they wanted to observe something more closely, they could walk up to it or they could move their consciousness up to the object without thinking about moving their body. The next exercise involves more a practice with mental moving. Look carefully at a chair. Notice the seat, the back, the sides, and if it has arms, the arms. Now, relax. Close your eyes. Imagine that you are facing the front of the chair. Look at it. Notice details of color, texture, and shape. Now look at the side of the chair and notice the profile. Then look at the back of the chair and notice its silhouette. Now look at the other side. Then come back to the front. Look down on the chair as if you were standing above it. Then look at the bottom as if you were below the chair. In doing this exercise, people learn they can move their consciousness at will without moving their bodies. When the instructions say look at the side of the chair, they just seem to be at the side of the chair and no longer in front of it. Other people feel a sense of disembodied movement. The next exercise continues to explore mental moving and introduces another kind of movement. Get a small three-dimensional object with protuberances such as a tea kettle. Look at all sides of the object. Notice the overall shape, the handle, the spout, the lid, and any dents or chips in the kettle. Relax deeply and close your eyes. Picture the tea kettle in front of you. Orient yourself so that you are looking at one side of the kettle. Now imagine that you are moving slowly around the kettle, observing how its shape changes. Notice how the spout goes out of sight when you are looking directly at the back of the kettle. Float slowly up above the kettle and look down on it. Look at the handle of the cover and opening of the spout. Float back down until the kettle is at your eye level. Now imagine that the tea kettle is rotating slowly in front of you while you remain stationary. Again, notice how shapes change as the kettle turns. The tea kettle exercise is the first exercise to introduce an imagination image. People imagine the kettle is turning. although they had not observed that in their outer world perception of the kettle. The next exercise involves mixes memory and imagination. Lie down, relax deeply, and close your eyes. Go back in your mind to the childhood room you visualized earlier. Reorient yourself in the room. Picture the walls in front of you and scan them until you come to a light switch. Turn it on. Look at the light. Notice how the bulb glows. Turn the switch on and off several times, watching the bulb brighten and dim as you do so. Mentally move to a desk or tabletop. Pick up an object from the surface, such as a book or a pencil. Turn it around, look at it, put it back down on the table. Now imagine that the same object starts to float up in front of you, as if it were weightless. Watch it float up past your eyes and bump gently on the ceiling. Watch it flow back down and land gently on the table's surface. Now turn until you face the window. Imagine yourself floating slowly toward the window and passing out through it. Let yourself hover a few feet outside the window. Look at the scene in front of you. Notice other houses, roads, trees, the sky. Still floating, look at the ground below you. Notice grass, sidewalks, shrubs, and other objects. Now gently float down until your feet touch the ground. In this exercise, people experience control over their visual images. Not only that they are able to do things beyond the laws of physical space, for example, they're able to float through a window themselves and make objects float in front of them, they're also able to make an object's appearance change when they switch the light on and off. The image of the light bulb changes from luminous to dark and back. The next exercise is designed to extend people's ability to transform images through visualization. This exercise has people play with objects and their characteristics. Picture an uninflated red balloon. Mentally blow it up until it is half full, but distinctly round. Knot it. Throw the balloon up in the air. When it gets near the ceiling, stop it there. Make the balloon rotate faster and faster. Then stop it. Make it bounce along the ceiling. Stop it. Bring it down until it's hovering just above eye level. Then change the color of the balloon to yellow. Look at it. Change the color to blue. Now make the blue balloon bounce along the floor. Stop it. Make the balloon bigger until it's almost doubled in size. Now, make the balloon very small and let it come to rest on the floor. In doing the balloon exercise and others before, people may have been surprised to find themselves visualizing things not specifically mentioned in the exercise. For example, when people watched the balloon float up to the ceiling, it may have been a familiar scene that they saw, or it may have been an unfamiliar ceiling which had particular details that they noticed. In this exercise, people also experiment further with control over their images. As a result of verbal instructions, they're able to change their visualizations in color and size. So far, these visualization exercises have dealt with objects. The next exercise deals with practicing visualization of a person. It is helpful if people choose someone who they know and see frequently, a close friend, a spouse, a child, or a business associate. Relax. Close your eyes. Imagine that you see the person standing a few feet away from you. Look at his or her face. Allow your eyes to scan the person's face as if they were standing in front of you. Notice the color of the person's eyes, skin, and hair. Look closely at the shape of the person's mouth, nose, and chin. Look at the rest of the person's body, noticing the person's clothes and how he or she is standing. Now imagine the person doing something you frequently watched. Notice the way the person's arms move, the way the person's body is held. Imagine that the person is talking on the phone. Watch the person's facial expressions. Listen to the person's voice. Hear what he or she is saying. Listen to the tone, the inflection, the volume. Finally, watch the person as the conversation ends. Many people find this exercise much harder than some of the others. This may be because a familiar person evokes many images, and it can be difficult to focus on the specific images described in the exercise. But people often have vivid daydreams about other people. If people realize their daydreams are visualizations, they can use them as exercises for improving their image control. Another exercise deals with people visualizing themselves. Interestingly enough, many people really do not have a clear image of what they look like. Some people find it useful to spend time looking at themselves in a mirror before doing this exercise. Looking at photographs and home movies is another way people can become familiar with the way they look. Relax, close your eyes, and mentally see yourself. Look at your face. Notice your hair, eyes, nose, and mouth. Look at your body, your hands and arms, your feet and legs, your torso. Watch yourself doing something you frequently do. Look at your movements, the way you hold your body. Imagine yourself answering the phone. Listen to your voice, to the inflections it has when you say something familiar. Many people find visualizing themselves more difficult than visualizing an object such as an apple. More thoughts seem to intrude. For example, a person may think, "Do I really look that way?" Or, "That's not how I look," because the object of a person's visualization is themselves. Their ego, with their fears and doubts and wishes, is much more likely to make itself heard and thereby enter into the visualization process. Actually, people are present as observers in all of the exercises that we've described so far. The attitude of observing objects and other people is much closer to ordinary consciousness than is the attitude of observing oneself. So far in the visualization exercises, even when people are active and doing phenomenal things such as floating out of a window, they do so from within themselves. But in this last exercise, people visualize themselves, which in a sense requires them to step outside of themselves. In other words, they have to separate their consciousness from their body, and many people find it disturbing the first time that they try it. Often they find the process easier if they visualize themselves in a real or imaginary situation with people and objects around them. In the two previous exercises, people imagine hearing a voice as well as seeing visual imagery. Mental imagery is not restricted to the visual alone, but involves other sensory modalities. Becoming aware of and using all the sensory modalities deepens and enriches the visualization process and its effectiveness. The next exercise will involve all of your senses. Close your eyes, relax deeply, visualize a tranquil scene from your past in which you felt strong and happy and at ease. You may remember being in the mountains or on the beach, or you may remember a particularly warm, quiet time at home. In any case, the moment which should be an especially fine one in which you felt as good as you ever have. Notice your surroundings. If you're at the beach, notice the sand, the waves, the sky. If you're at the mountains, notice the trees, the ground, and again the sky. Wherever you are, notice details in your surroundings, such as pebbles on the ground, light dancing on the water, or coming through the trees, leaves on the ground. Notice the breeze. Notice the warmth of the sand and the coolness. Notice the way the ground feels against your body. Smell the air, the salty odor from the sea, the live, hummusy odor of the woods. Hear the sounds around you. The waves breaking on the shore, the leaves of the trees rustling in the wind. The cries of birds overhead, the chirp of nearby crickets. Remember how you felt. The warm heaviness in your arms and legs, the gentle rise and fall of your chest as you breathe. Enjoy these sensations. In this exercise, people experience how, in using the mind's sense of hearing, touch, and smell, their visualizations acquire richness, reality, and presence. After doing this exercise, most people feel very good. They're able to bring the pleasurable sensations of their visualization back into their ordinary consciousness. And in fact, doing this exercise, they discover a quiet place in their mind they can return to whenever they wish to feel those good sensations. In this exercise, people primarily experience past sensations. The next exercise involves having people imagine sensations and experience them in their body. Sit down, close your eyes, relax deeply, hold your arms straight out in front of you. Imagine that your left hand is becoming heavy, very heavy. Imagine that it feels as if it were made of lead. Picture a heavy object such as a book resting on your left hand. Feel the weight of the object on your left hand. Feel the weight of the object. Now imagine that your right hand feels very light. Imagine there's a string around your right wrist that is attached to a helium balloon and feel the buoyancy of the balloon. Now open your eyes. Now, most people who do this exercise will find that their left hand has dropped considerably and their right hand has drifted upwards. Often people feel the tendency of their hands to move as they are doing this exercise. Robert Stone uses this exercise in a number of his books, and some people unconsciously act to keep their hands level. So if it doesn't happen so that they're both the same, then you are unconsciously trying to keep them level. This exercise gives people practice in visualizing situations which produce changes in their body. The sight of their hands in different positions when they open their eyes shows their body responds to the visual images that they held. Until now, all the visualizations we've dealt with have involved the conscious programming of visual images. For example, a person has said to himself, "The balloon is red, yellow, and blue," and has seen the balloon correspondingly change in color. The next exercise involves people experiencing undirected visualizations that arise spontaneously. I've mentioned that people are sometimes surprised when they see details they're not mentioned in an exercise. This element is kind of spontaneous visualization. Another difference in the next exercise is that it will focus on an imagination, not a memory or image. So objects that people will picture may be objects that they have never seen before. Earlier, I talked about the fact that some people may feel that they're making it all up. This feeling is especially common in spontaneous imagination exercises. Some people call this type of exercise a receptive visualization. Close your eyes, relax deeply. In this exercise, you will visualize a place or a room where you can go to work in your inner world. The room is as real as a studio or a shop, but it exists in inner space, in your mind. Begin to visualize yourself in this space. You may see the space all at once, or parts of it may appear gradually. Begin to look around. Notice where you are. Notice whether you are out of doors or in a room. If you're in a room, notice how the walls, doors, and windows look, what they're made of. Look at the ceilings, the floor, the rugs, the furniture. If you're out of doors, notice the kind of place where you are. Is it a clearing in the woods or a meadow or a cave? Look closely at the trees, the plants, the rocks. Find a comfortable place to sit. It may be a chair, a rug, or the ground. You may be surprised to find that your inner space is filled with plants, although it is a room, or that it has a comfortable chair, although it is out of doors. Because you are visualizing the space, there are no limits on what you may see in it. There may be objects made from materials you've never seen before, even objects that float in space. Explore the space until you feel familiar with it. There are several things which people find useful in their inner space, and you can visualize them if you wish. You may already have noticed some of these things in looking around your inner space. The first object is a clock. The second is a viewing screen. You may also visualize a guide, someone who can help you answer questions. If you visualize a guide, notice what he or she looks like and how he or she is dressed. You can even ask the guide's name and talk to them now. Look around once more and visualize anything else you would like in your workshop. This is a space you can return to whenever you wish to work, to think, or to just feel good. In this exercise, people experience receiving visualization, having a visualization, come to them without pre-programming its contents. In the exercise, I suggest objects such as a room with no details to define them. Most people are surprised when they do see a room. Often, these locations are very detailed, even though the person has never seen them before. A feeling similar to this is experienced by artists when they envision a new work, and by writers when they visualize fictional characters. Now, this is just a couple of visualization exercises to open the mind's eye. The most important thing I want you to understand is you may think you're a good visualizer, but it's likely that you're not. The biggest mistake that people make is they immediately go to the hard visualization exercise when they really haven't practiced it very much. And then they sit and try to visualize something that they want to experience, to have, and then they say, well, it's not working. I don't know what's wrong. And in reality, they're not really visualizing, or they're not visualizing properly. One thing I've done in a couple of meditations at the beginning is to visualize numbers, count down from 3, but visualize the number with a color and a shadow moving around in a circle. Do that on a regular basis. Just count down from 3 or from 10 and visualize each number with a different color in 3 dimensions, moving. That is one thing that helped me to at least start the process of visualizing. If you're like me, and many of you are, then you're impatient. You just want to get right to it and visualize. And you may find some success the more you do this. But if you stop and go back to the basics, you will find a greater power to visualize, and that your visualizations are more effective in creating your reality. Check out my book, The Reality Revolution, which gives you techniques to use visualizations that allow you to completely create your own reality, whatever it is that you want. It could have to do with love, with money, with whatever it is that you want. All things are possible if you can learn how to visualize. And it is my impression, as I become awakened to the thoughts of others and the minds of others, that many people are in the dark. They're good at visualizing, they're good at daydreaming certain things because they've done it their whole lives. But when they go about trying to create a visual image for the thing that they want, they struggle with it. And a lot of people won't even admit it. But I want you to know it's totally normal. And if you can learn how to visualize, if you can learn the process of visualizing, get used to your own process, if you can link it to your senses, create depth and perception, and continually get better and better at it, it's a lot like a basketball player shooting their free throws in practice. I'm sure they don't love to do it. It's something they do repetitively over and over again. And in many cases, I'm sure they look at it as work. Oh man, I got to shoot my free throws. But if they shoot 100 free throws every day, when the game time comes, they're going to hit 98 of them out of 100. And that's because they took that time to practice it. So treat your reality in the same way. We are all playing a game, and we visualize and associate our visualizations with thoughts and feelings. And in that process, we create states of mind that reflect outwards in our outward experience in the realities that we have. When you do this properly, it's going to change your life. And if you've struggled with it, if you're one of those people that said, I have tried to visualize many times and I never manifest what I visualize, I'm asking you to take a step back and look at the basics. Can you concentrate? Are you relaxed when you do it? How do you see when you look at things with intensity? And once you understand those aspects, go about practicing visualizing. Visualize things that you see already. Try to visualize things that you don't see. And you'll get better and better at this. And then when you have a complicated event or experience that you set about to visualize from the first person, then you're going to get really, really good at it. Sounds are important and feelings are important. Some people are really good at creating the voices of others in their sounds, and that could be enough. According to Neville Goddard, all it takes is one of your senses in order for the law of assumption to work. So it can just be your feelings, it can just be the sounds, it can just be the visual. But when you combine all of them together, then you are a powerhouse. And I want you to become the powerhouse. You can create your reality. I promise. Your visualization, we know, affects your body, it affects your mind, and there's so much more to it. So I hope that some of these exercises will help you. Please report if you have any success. I really want to know if anybody is suffering from aphantasia that maybe has some success with some of the things we talked about. But in any case, I want to know everything that you say, which exercises helped you more than others, and if you have new exercises or additional exercises that you suggest, please put them in the comments. If there's any comments on any of my videos that have a WhatsApp number, ignore them, just as a side comment. But anyway, I will keep an eye and read all the comments, and if you have any new exercises, I may dedicate an entirely new episode if you have new visualization exercises to share with me because I think they're all effective and important, and this is just a beginning. So let me know what you think, and I want to know how you became a great visualizer. I want to know your whole story and what it was that changed your way of visualizing and how you became more effective at it. And if you can share it with us, then other people can see that and they can go and change their realities and their world too. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.